This guy's backstory is insane. We're going to be reviewing and ranking every important non-comic portrayal of Jason Todd, aka the Red Hood, and see how good the hidden gems of DC's most underrated character is. We have to start with the obvious one. The highest rated animated Batman movie ever, sitting at a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, featuring Jason Todd himself as the main antagonist. That is Batman Under the Red Hood. It sucks to get the best entry out of the way so quickly, but even though this is objectively the highest quality portrayal we're going to look at, there's definitely some surprisingly more interesting ones later on. Also, the reason we're even making this right now is because our Dick Grayson Nightwing video got 500 likes, and so many people requested Red Hood, so 500 likes on this and we'll do a villain one like Bane or whoever else gets requested the most in the comments. Under the Red Hood is the origin story of Jason Todd as the Red Hood. If you haven't seen this movie, you definitely should, and if you have, I'm going to go over a lot of the general plot details and show you what makes this specific movie so much better than a lot of the other ones. This is one of the rare examples in Batman media where we get a Robin and then we get the older persona of said Robin in the same movie. Jason Todd starts out as a pretty unique Robin here, not as confident and hot-headed as Damian, but not as tactical and cautious as Nightwing. It's a bit mysterious what's going on in the beginning of the movie, but the Joker makes quick work, giving us one of the only times someone gets murked and dies right off the bat in a modern Batman movie. This is already a pretty crazy beginning, and everything here is worth talking about. The animation is great, and it's a really unique setup to a movie that changes how people look at Bruce and the rest of the Bat family forever. One of the standout details from Under the Red Hood that not too many Batman movies do anymore is it makes Batman look bad. Anyways, the Red Hood appears a few years later after all of this goes down and pretty much wipes out crime in Gotham in a week. He kills a few gang leaders, he completely takes over the drug and weapon trade, and he sets ground rules all criminals must follow or they die. So it's still not a perfect world in Gotham, but it's 1,000 times better in the short amount of time that he's been here than Bruce has accomplished in decades. Batman obviously can't let this slide, so he teams up with Nightwing, another great addition to any movie, and Dick Grayson's character makes all of these character dynamics a lot better. One of the rules I've noticed after watching all of the DC animated movies is that they limit the amount of Robins or former Robins to 2 maximum. This one has Dick Grayson and then obviously Jason Todd. Then most of the movies after this have Dick Grayson and Damian. I can't see why they do this, since having 3 or more could probably get a little confusing, but it's really a mystery why Jason Todd doesn't make too many more appearances after this one and any future installments to the DCU. We'll talk more about Jason's future installments and his relationship with the other Robins and some of the future entries also. Anyways, after the Batman fights the Red Hood, he figures out pretty quickly it's Jason, but he doesn't know how he could possibly still be alive. This is where I got the first real surprise from this movie, where Bruce finds out that Raj Al Ghul willingly brought Jason back using the Lazarus Pit. Maybe this twist would be obvious to comic readers or people really familiar with Batman lore, but I didn't expect Raj to do something nice for Bruce like this, and I wouldn't have guessed this was the reason that Jason was back. The movie is also a pretty perfect example of how to blend so many important antagonists in one movie perfectly, with the Red Hood, Joker, the regular Mafia, Amazo, the Black Mask, Raj Al Ghul, and a bunch of other people doing their part without clogging up the plot. They do it better here than even like a masterpiece like The Dark Knight, where a lot of people still complain that all the villains in that movie make it a bit more complicated than it has to be. The rest of the movie follows a bit of a loop where Bruce and Jason fight and argue over why Bruce couldn't kill the Joker after the Joker went out of his way to kill Robin in the beginning of the movie. This is what I mean about the movie making Batman seem wrong, because it's pretty obvious Jason is right here and the Joker should have been dead a long time ago. If Bruce doesn't want to kill the Joker after he kills thousands of innocent people, that should probably be expected by now, but after torturing and killing his own Robin and then escaping Arkham several times and doing whatever he wants, he probably should not be alive anymore. anymore. Jason tries to lay all of this out for Bruce and he still refuses to agree with him, to the point where Red Hood gives him a choice. Either kill the Joker and he can be forgiven, or Jason will kill the Joker and whatever happens after that is his own fault. This seems like an extremely reasonable ultimatum in my opinion. After everything Bruce has done, Jason is giving him the opportunity to fix all of it and get his family back, and all he has to do is kill the worst person on the planet. This is where the movie gets really frustrating because of course Bruce refuses to do that, and it causes a huge fight per usual. It ends with the Joker doing some Joker shenanigans like usual and blowing up the building they're all in, with Batman escaping, Joker dying, and it being a mystery what happens to the Red Hood. While it is a bit of an annoying ending with Bruce obviously making the wrong choice, the influence the story has on the characters of Batman, Joker, and Jason is undeniable, and it really stands out as one of the only stories where Bruce is just flat out wrong and gets people killed standing by his choices. If I was writing the story, I could not end it this way, and I would prefer Bruce could have made the right choice and made an exception to his no killing rule to get his family back. Either way though, this movie is amazing and it really makes you feel mad, sad, or impressed with Batman and Jason's choices. Any story that can make you feel all of this, along with having great action scenes, really good animation, and Jensen Ackles voicing one of the main characters, has to land you in S tier. And I'm not even really talking about the Red Hood character here, which is the entire point of the tier list anyways, but it's pretty obvious that this is the best portrayal of Jason Todd in the movies, and everything I mentioned so far being good is dependent on his character. Arkham Knight was the entry I was least excited for, but after playing it, I was very surprised. All Jason Todd stories follow the same kind of origin story, that Jason is taken by the Joker pretty early on and tortured or killed. In this universe, it's a little bit different. Arkham Knight is a video game, by the way, too, in case that wasn't clear, and that's why it looks a little bit different, but we're going to go back to the movies and the shows and everything after this one. I just wanted to include this one game since it has a huge Red Hood plot involvement, and there's definitely some things to look at. Anyways, Jason gets kidnapped by the Joker here, and he makes a fake video killing him and sends it to Bruce. Bruce grieves and moves on with a new Robin really quickly, which is a little bit crazy, but Joker is just going ham on Jason in the meantime, while Batman just kind of assumes he's dead from the vid. I don't know if it's like a theme for Red Hood stories to make Bruce look like an absolute asshole, but he's the worst version of the character whenever he's involved with Jason. I mentioned earlier Red Hood kind of gets phased out in the DC movies and shows, and my theory is that DC just wants Batman to be this simple, perfect character with minimal arcs, and they don't want to show him being a bad parent or a bad guardian to these Robins. With Dick, he's a pretty good parent most of the time, and with Damian, the worst he does is be overprotective with him, and that's a pretty big difference than what we get here when we see him with Jason Todd, where most of the time it ends up with Joker beating him to death and Bruce just kind of brushing it off. This story is different because Jason doesn't actually die here, and when Bruce gives up looking for him and just gets another Robin, Jason feels like he's replaced, and it makes him 1,000 times madder than some of the other stories. Despite all of this, when he figures out Bruce didn't actually know that he survived, he flips pretty easily back into a good guy and gives up his persona of the Arkham Knight. I was planning on talking about how some of his costumes are really trash, and I thought I would get to show some of that here, but his Red Hood outfit is actually really cool in this game. His Arkham Knight costume is pretty atrocious though, so I don't know what they were doing with that. This is arguably a deeper Jason Todd story than Under the Red Hood, and a lot of people say this is a sadder version or a more complex relationship between some of the characters, but I kind of disagree with that. In this story, Bruce doesn't really have a choice to save Jason or to make him feel better. He really did think he was dead and that there was nothing he could do. In Under the Red Hood, he has a chance to make everything better by killing Joker, and he still doesn't do it. So I kind of think that version tells a bit of a stronger story than this one. It's fun to play as Red Hood here, and if you want to experience this game without actually playing it, there's cutscene movies on YouTube where you can watch it like a regular Batman movie, and it's actually pretty good. I thought I was going to end up putting this in S tier again after playing it and watching some of the playthroughs, but after thinking a bit more about it, I don't really like how Jason flips so fast from wanting to kill Bruce into kind of just forgiving him and becoming the Red Hood. I feel like it would be a lot better if he had to do something heavy to earn Jason's forgiveness, like killing the major villain or something similar. Still an amazing Red Hood adaptation and probably many people's favorites, plus it has a happy ending which we love, so A tier fits it pretty nicely. In my Nightwing tier list video, I put so many things in the upper tiers and not enough in the lower tiers, so I'm afraid I'm going to do that again here. But Red Hood has so little adaptations outside the comics and they're all so good, so it's funny to say, but I hope there's a lower tier version of Jason Todd later on so I can balance out the tier list a little bit. The movie we're going to be looking at after this is by far the weirdest, most unique one out of all of these, but for now we have another really controversial one. Jason Todd appears as Robin and Red Hood in the live-action Titans TV show, interacting with a lot more characters here than he usually gets to. And I thought Under the Red Hood and the Arkham Knight game made Bruce look like a bad parent, but here he is just a borderline evil person and way worse than before. Jason's backstory is mostly a rebellion into straight up villain in Titans, with a redemption thanks to Dick Grayson and others later on. Bruce throws him to the wolves here, and when Jason can't handle it and he's forcefully put into therapy, Bruce uses what Jason confides to the therapist to hurt him and make him feel like he isn't worthy of being Robin. This is a super summed up version, but Batman is just a psychopath here, and the show is mostly focused on Nightwing bringing Todd back into the light. This version is one of the only ones where Red Hood is just a straight up villain. He's not an anti-hero or a good person or acting out to get Bruce's attention. He's pretty much just evil. The show isn't good and it did get canceled due to low interest, but the Red Hood episodes are the highest rating in the entire series, and it isn't a horrible portrayal of the character. The entire show Titans itself isn't as good as I'm making it seem here, but focusing on just Red Hood in the story just makes it seem a lot better overall. If this was a Batman tier list, it would probably be much lower, but overall I think Jason is better as an anti-hero kind of character, and using Scarecrow instead of Ra's al Ghul or Joker, or even someone like Black Mask is a pretty clear downgrade. Even with just taking the Red Hood episodes into account and not really the rest of the show, I still think a C tier here is appropriate, and a lot of people say Red Hood is actually the best part of this entire show, so you can probably see why it got cancelled. Also, the reason we're just doing S, A, C, and D is because there just isn't enough Red Hood stories to rank into a super extensive list, kind of like I had in the Nightwing vid, and I would love if there were actually more stories that weren't comics, but like I said in the beginning, 500 likes, and we can do a character with a bit more popularity who has more stuff going on like Bane, or maybe even like a Marvel hero or something, whoever you guys want down in the comments. Anyways, let's move on to the most interesting entry on this video by far. Now here's the one I've been waiting to talk about: Batman Death in the Family. We have some other important ones later on with a lot of fans, but this is one of the most unique movies out of all of them, if you can even call it that. In reality, DC thought they were cooking here with a premise no one has ever done before, and that is a choose your own path movie with over 9 different endings. This was based on the comic run in the 90s where the publishers let the fans call to decide if Jason Todd survived or died, and surprisingly something like 80% of the fans voted for Jason to die, which is absolutely insane. It is a good thing they didn't decide to do something like this with Damian, because if 80% of Batman fans hated Jason Todd, early stories involving Damian's Robin would probably be like 99% voting to kill him. DC presented this and they were talking like they just discovered something insane with the newest technology, and they had an entire roadmap for other movies that they were going to make like this, but Death in the Family ended up being the only one that ever ended up happening. If you're wondering what this has to do with Red Hood, this is pretty much a retelling of Under the Red Hood, where instead of the canon ending where the warehouse exploded and it's like up in the air what happened, you can pick from a group of definitive endings here. And all of this actually sounds pretty cool at first while I'm explaining it, but this is only available on the Blu-ray DVD. So on streaming, it's about a 30-minute reenaction of Under the Red Hood with the same ending as the original movie. And I don't even think you can find this on streaming even if you wanted to, because it used to be on HBO Max but got taken down, and it's only available to buy in some places for about $5, and that doesn't come with the option to choose which way you want to go, so it would be a complete waste of money. It seems like DC abandoning not only this movie but also all the other plans it had for all of the other similar movies means it's kind of admitting that this was bad, but it still has some to offer that we can look at real quick if we dive into the different pathways. Out of the 7 or 9 or 12 pathways, whatever it has, because like some of them have like other options once you get into them. It's kind of a shame, but there's only like 1 or 2 good ones. And that's why no one watches this, and they kind of just instead choose to watch Under the Red Hood, which is the much better choice. Most of the endings here are pretty similar and really weird, but they boil down to the choice of either saving Jason or letting him die in that explosion. To just speed run through the different endings, if you let him live, he becomes permanently scarred and he turns into like a villain that's kind of like Hush, if you've seen that movie, or he teams up with Two-Face in the different ending and becomes even more evil, or my personal favorite, he lives for a while and then Batman comes back and becomes a suicide bomber and blows them both up. I'm not joking either, that actually happens. And if these endings sound really badly written and not fun at all to you, you'd probably be right, and you can see why this multiple choice idea never really picked up. If you decide Jason dies, on the other hand, it shows a clip of Bruce narrating all of this to Superman and then getting a dessert at a restaurant with him, so I don't think he really cared too much about it. And if you think I'm just making all of this sound bad, and it's probably not as bad as I'm making it seem, there's a reason that ratings for this interactive movie are really low, and it's pretty much just a worse version of Under the Red Hood. You could go one by one deeply into each of the alternate routes too, but all of them destroy the character of Jason Todd, and just turning him into a separate villain if he survives isn't really creative or well written, and it kind of diminishes the entire Red Hood situation. There is one exception to this actually, surprisingly, and you've probably seen it on YouTube Shorts, where Jason meets the reformed Joker years later and he's done killing people and everything, and it ends up with him killing him with a fork in the diner after they recognize each other. This is pretty much the only cool thing about this entire thing, and it's a little bit of a gem buried under a mountain of mistakes here. You got to give DC credit for trying something new, but it seems like it ended up as a train wreck here. Personally, I think having 10 plus endings to a movie kind of undercuts the entire point of a story and writing a plot and everything if any random person can just decide to pick whatever ending they feel like. I was wondering earlier why they decided to aggressively replace Jason Todd with Dick Grayson and Damian, and it's hard not to look at this movie for maybe the reason why. It probably was a combination of several things, but I would assume this project's low ratings probably contributed to that decision, and if any of the endings were actually good and moved Jason's character in a good direction, I would rate this higher. But considering every single ending ends super badly for him or just ends up with him becoming someone else's villain persona, I think a D here is pretty non-negotiable. Now we can kind of speedrun a few of the other Jason Todd portrayals that aren't as important as the movies, but some of them still have some pretty good character stuff in them. We have a good one after this, but for now we have to unfortunately take a super quick look at the Gotham Knights video game. I talked about this one in my Nightwing tier list video, and I don't remember where I put it, but I think it ranked actually pretty high. And I think I put it there because the gameplay with Dick Grayson is really unique and his character has a ton of emphasis there. For Jason though, it's going to be a bit of a different story. This is, I think, the only version of Jason Todd that has superpowers given to him from the Lazarus Pit. He jumps around and pretty much flies and uses soul powers that Ra's al Ghul passed down to him in this version, which I kind of feel takes a lot away from his character. His main trait is that he's dangerous because he's a regular man trained by Batman, and he's revenge driven, and he's pretty much just like an evil version of Batman. A lot of that gets overshadowed when you give him mystical demon-like powers, and it's just not needed. I guess it can kind of be excused if it makes the gameplay fun, but I personally would not make this choice. Something else unique here is that this entry breaks my 2 Robin rule that I talked about earlier, with Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and even Tim Drake making an appearance here. Super rare for Tim Drake to show up in anything at this point, and I'm sure all 4 of his fans were absolutely stoked to see him here. Maybe we have to do a Tim Drake tier list next. I'm just super unfamiliar with this character, and if Jason Todd has been cast aside in recent portrayals, Tim Drake has been like completely erased from everyone's mind in comparison. Anyways, Batman has been dead in this game for a while, so Jason isn't too caught up in getting his revenge or making him kill Joker, and he's kind of moved on to the point where his character is using non-lethal rounds. I don't know if you guys agree, but I don't like to watch a Red Hood using non-lethal rounds in a video game where Batman has been long dead. I do like where he's happy and not too obsessed with revenge, but there's kind of a limit and you gotta get a balance between them. Overall, taking into account that the fact that he has superpowers here, he has a little motivation, and it's just a bad game, we gotta stick this one in the C tier. The reason he's not joining Death in the family version in D is because this isn't an insulting portrayal of Jason, it's just not a really good one either. He isn't turning into Scarecrow or anything, but he doesn't have too much to do, and you can kind of just replace him with any other character in this game and it would work the same way. Last one here, and I'm actually excited about this one, Red Hood 2 in the Injustice 2 video game. He isn't even in the main game and he's just a DLC character, but like almost all of the other ones, he's in a pretty unique situation here. I know I keep saying that, and I don't know why Jason is never just in like a normal movie where he's doing normal things. He's either getting blown to smithereens and turning into a zombie, or having mystical superpowers, or he's becoming the Arkham Knight. Like, he's never normal. Usually I don't like when it deviates from the norm, and I especially don't like when it's more of a solo movie for Jason and it doesn't involve Batman, but here it's completely different. Injustice is just a horrendous storyline and destroys everyone's character, so getting a good Jason Todd version in there is just a huge surprise, and it automatically sets it up for a good rating already. Redhood doesn't agree with Superman or Batman's side in the story, so he's just wandering around killing whoever. It's funny because almost everyone in Injustice has a deep storyline with super deep motivations, but Jason just crashes out when he sees the Joker, and he's perfectly fine with murdering whoever else like business as usual. His voice lines specifically state he doesn't care about what Batman or Superman are doing, and he's just fighting for what he thinks the people want and what he thinks is right. It's a really grounded mini story in a huge universal conflict, and I haven't seen anything like this with Injustice. His fighting style is really cool too. He wastes no time trying to kill people with shots only to the head, kneecaps, or elbows. He has all of the things you'd expect from a Batman trained assassin, with knives, grenades, guns, and pretty much everything you want from the character. I was going to stick this in A since Injustice is pretty trash and I don't like rating anything to do with it super high, and on top of that, he's just a DLC character here and he isn't even in the main game. Plus, I don't want the S tier to be too crowded, but that's kind of just unfair thinking, and to be honest, I think any Jason Todd fan can appreciate this version of the character, and even me who doesn't like the Outer Worlds version of Red Hood can find a ton of positives here. My hands tied against my will, it also joins the S tier, and as a bonus, Star Wars The Last Jedi joins the F tier. That's about it for Red Hood, guys. Thank you for all of the comments suggesting this, and remember, 500 likes and we'll do something really fun. I'm thinking maybe Bane, but drop who you think in the comments that we should make a tier list video for next. Anyways, feel free to sub up as we've been grinding out videos recently and going to keep uploading in the future. See you guys.